Hi guys, my name is Roger, and I'm building a mid-engine supercar in the basement of my home. Let's take a look at what I've been working on this week.
Alright, as I finished up the CNC machine, even though in the last video I said it was done except for a few small details. Well, those details have all been finished, and I just want to do a closing video showing how everything works and kind of show some up-close videos of different locations and what I did. But let's get started. Let me show you a couple of these things. You can see I have the vacuum head here mounted. Ran the hose up and used some zip ties here in a couple of locations. This works really well so far, moving up and down. I'll show you how it holds up over time. As part of this vacuum head, everything is held on by magnets. And you take these two pieces off for an easy tool change, and once they are put back on the table, just magnetizes back in place. Let me remove this and show you a couple of other features. I have the calibration down to where I think it's within thousandths over a 65-inch span of the table. I ran the axis along the y-axis 65 inches, and I have that calibrated really close. I'm very happy with the outcome of that. I have the reference all home function working. I wanted to show you that in operation on the screen here. When you first start up the program, for the machine to know exactly where it's at, you hit this reference all home button. And the machine will slowly home all three axes. You can see it moving up. It does each one twice, fast and then slow on the second one, just to be more precise. Okay, it just finished Z. It's coming to do Y. You'll see the light up on the proximity sensor when it's triggered. And again, it does it fast and then comes back and does it slower, just for more accuracy. All right, and then last we'll do X. And this is important every time you turn the machine on to do this first, because that way the machine knows exactly where it's at for the zero tool changer, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Okay, now the machine has been homed. It knows exactly where it's at in reference to the table and in reference to this zero axis tool changer here. Let me move the machine out of the way a little bit. Now let's say you came down here anywhere on the table and raised the head up and did a tool change. So when you put a new tool in, you need to know where zero is for the table bed. And for that feature, hit the auto tool zero here. I have two different selections. One is if I'm using the surface here as a measurement, and the other is if I'm using a 3/4 inch standoff, which is what I'm doing here on all of my molds. I have them sitting on a 3/4 inch board just to protect my surface here. I don't want the tool touching this surface. So for this one, we'll pick the surface of the table itself, which is a longer measurement. I hit OK. It immediately jumps over the top of this probe and then slowly comes down to touch the probe. It triggers the switch, it backs off.
Complete.
It tells you that the tooling is complete, and you can see here it has adjusted the 0 to 2.727, which is the exact measurement off of this surface to the bottom of the tool. So anytime you do a tool change, you can just press that auto tool 0 button, and it automatically zeroes the tool with the top of the table or with the top of these 3/4 inch spacers, which I'm using, whichever one you select. And here's a close-up of the proximity sensor, the wiring, the drag chain. How I've bolted some of this together. It's my Delrin rub block here for the drag chain to ride up and down against. I have my MPG here. It has magnets on the back, so it's just stuck on this electrical cabinet for now. So the next thing I'm going to do, since the machine is completely finished and ready to use, I forgot to show you, I did put all of the inserts, the threaded inserts, in the table, so every hole has a threaded insert threaded in from up underneath the table. The next thing to do is to put this block back up on the machine. This is a block I had put together several weeks ago and was getting ready to machine. I actually started machining. You can see where it started cutting here before the old machine died on me. So I need to put this back up on the tabletop, zero it in, and start cutting it. I still have the program where I was getting ready to cut it. So I'll load the program, get this block mounted on the tabletop, and we are ready to start cutting a file again. Get back to work on the car. But I just want to take a couple of minutes to show you these things. Okay, I want to give you guys a little update. It's been, actually it's been quite a few days since I've done any filming. The last thing I filmed was I was starting to cut a pattern on the CNC. This is the part that I had made on the old CNC machine, and when it died it was cutting, it had just finished this pattern, it was starting the other half of this mold. This part has been primed twice with high build primer. I primed it and sanded and primed a second time and sanded. I'm trying to get rid of, I don't know if you can see them, maybe you can here in the light. There's some little ridges here in this MDF. It has kind of a wood grain look actually. But I'm trying to fill those. I talked to a friend of mine who is a body man, and he said it would probably take many coats of high build primer, maybe even 15 or 20 to get rid of those in the mold. So he suggested buying some Bondo and a squeegee, and squeegeeing Bondo as thin as I could get it on here, and then coming back and sanding before applying the high build primer. He said that would be the best way to fill the weave, and I agree. So I have ordered some Bondo. I'm just trying to finish this mold so I can start doing it. I cut the front half of this mold on the new CNC, which is what you saw cutting a few minutes ago. This is the front half. I glued it on and set it up on top of the car inverted just to see how it fit and how it looked and how the windshield set in it. And I noticed I had made a mistake. The lip here where the windshield sets in was an undercut, and because I had it sitting flat on the table, it didn't cut this shape correct. It couldn't get to the undercut part. So what I'm doing now is I had to cut this part off of the mold to replace it with a new part, which I have on the CNC now, and I'm machining it tilted at an angle like this, so this undercut is actually parallel to the table or perpendicular to the table, parallel to the cutting tool, so it can cut that the correct shape and have that undercut so the windshield will lay down in there correctly. So I had already glued this to the mold, so I had to cut it back off, and it is at a 20-degree angle, which is what it took to get this leaned over to the right degree or the right angle so I could cut it on the CNC. But that file is cutting. I'm cutting. It's about to finish up the rough pass now. Once that finishes, I can do the final pass and clean that part up. And I'll bring it down here and glue it onto this half of the mold. The table saw was not, the blade wasn't large enough to cut all the way through, so it broke these little tiny ears off. I'll probably cut these off with a bandsaw and glue them back on after the fact, since I need to bondo this whole thing anyway. I'll just work these little corners back in. Once it's glued together, I'll glue them on and bondo and putty and sand, work those back ends nice and smooth. But that is what is taking so long. That's why there hasn't been a video update. I've been struggling trying to get these parts glued together and smooth, and then once they were together I realized there was a mistake, so I'm recutting this part, and it's just been time consuming it takes a while to cut these files on the CNC. Honestly, a file like this, the one I'm cutting now, took me about 6 hours for the rough cut and about 4 to 5 hours for the final cut. So it's a 2-day cut for me. I have to cut the machine off at night. I don't leave it running all night long. And it's just been a learning process. I'm new to all of this, so I'm making some mistakes. I am limited, or was limited, on a cutting depth of 3 inches because of the cutter. So what I was doing was trying to manipulate this and put it on the machine to where I could cut pieces that were no thicker than 3 inches, which you can see I have 4 layers of 3/4 here, which is 3 inches. That left a piece here that was missing. I was going to have to come in and cut a separate piece and glue it on. But I found a longer cutter. I found a cutter that's it's almost 6 inches long actually. So what I can do in the future is cut a thicker board. I could have laminated another piece on here and cut all this in one cut, which will make life much easier. So I am learning. Hopefully some of you guys probably know way more about this than I do. If not, maybe you can learn with me. But when we get this mold finished and get a part off of it, hopefully we will have learned enough that the rest of these body molds will be at least a little more simple. But that's an update for now, and when I have this part off of the CNC and I'm getting ready to attach it here and finish this mold, I will show you what I'm doing on that process and what it looks like. If I don't forget, I'll also set it back up on top of the car and show you how it interacts with the roof of the car and the windshield and what all of that looks like. Okay, this is the mold now that I've added the new front part here. This is the part I cut off that had the incorrect angle. This angle should have been an undercut, but wasn't because of the way I cut the part. You can see I had this sitting on the table here, which made this an undercut, and then the tool, when it cut it, left part of the area there to keep from removing it. On this new part, this was on a 20-degree angle, so with this 20-degree angle sitting flat on the table, it rotated this around to where now I have this undercut, and it is correct for the windshield to lay in. And I glued this together. It is one solid piece. I'm going to lay this up on top of the car and make sure that it looks like this new piece I've added with the undercut fits the windshield correctly around here. And once I verify that, then I will need to start finishing this part. And the first thing I'll do is skim coat it with Bondo. My Bondo is here, and hopefully that'll fill in some of this texture here. Hope you can see this texture in the camera. I think it's picking it up. But I'll skim coat it with Bondo and then sand that down, and we'll start coming back with our high build primer and finishing this mold. Once I have the surface where I need it to be, I have a hole here I need to fill in also. I need to take some pieces, some 3/4 or 1/2 inch or something wood, and attach here. This is a slight curve to it, but I need a wall or a rib here to stand up. At least an inch, probably 1.5 inches, so I'll have some to trim off. But this flange turning down will be where the side walls of the car, where the glass is on the roof, attached. There'll be a wall on both pieces and they will bolt together, and this is where it will attach on that bolted seam, will attach to the roll bar of the car, and physically all these panels will be attached to the car at that point. But let me carry this over and set it on top of the car and see how the windshield aligns with this area where the windshield should sit, and make sure that's okay. Okay, here's the mold sitting on top of the car in the correct location. You can kind of see the shape of the roof where it comes from the windshield and curves upward slightly and starts back down to the hatch. You can see where this line, where the two body panels will bolt together, where the body panel continues on down here with the door glass, and this A-pillar will bolt together here along this line, and there will be a piece of metal that attaches to this roll bar that stands up and sandwiches here where this bolts together also. That will hold these two pieces in the correct location with this roll bar and position it for the roof of the car. Here on the back of the mold, this is probably hard to see, there's a line here that will get cut off, and that is where the hatch will start coming down. You can kind of see inside the shape of the roof. And this is what I was checking. This is really going to be hard to see. Hold on one second. Here, this pocket, this step where the windshield will glue in, lines up with the top of the windshield here on this rubber all the way around. It doesn't align perfect. There's distance here just a little bit wider, but I believe it is close enough to work okay. It's not much different. Plus this windshield flexes just a little up and down, which changes that depth. Glass is very flexible until it gets glued in, but I think this looks like it will align and work correctly. And sitting in the car, I can see how much head clearance I have. Now, of course, there'll be a headliner which will drop this down ever so slightly that bolts in also. But even with the headliner, I have plenty of roof clearance, and I think this aligns and works like it should. I don't see any issues. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Bondo and skim coat this and start finishing it. Just trying to give you guys an overall visual of how this looks. You can kind of see the roof line here. How high the car will be, which actually I don't have the ride height adjusted perfectly yet. I will adjust that and get the ride height perfect before I start mounting body panels, and then once it's finished, the car will have to adjust the ride height one last time with the weight of the body and all the finishing items on it. That's what it looks like, and let me get to working on finishing this mold. Well, here is the roof mold, what it currently looks like. I just finished block sanding it, or the majority of it. This part of it is a little bit behind because I added it last. So I've actually sanded and applied one extra coat of primer, a high build primer here than I have up at that end. So that's why it looks a little different up there. That area is just behind. But I block sanded all of this, and I came back, and once you block sand, you can see the areas that need touch-ups. You can see low spots. So I've taken and put putty in all the low spots, just squeegeed it on. And once this all dries, I'll come back in and block sand it one last time. And if I don't see anything that stands out that needs more putty, this section, all of this area down here, will be ready for another coat of high build primer, and I think it's getting close. Now there are still a few little spots here that need some work here, and where I blended these in together here. I think there's a high spot on both corners I need to try to block sand out. But as far as this, you can see places in it, but they are actually very smooth. Most all of this is really getting close. I think a coat of high build primer will all but make that perfect. And hopefully this is getting close. There's still a lot more work left here. I am hoping to have this finished by the weekend. It is Sunday right now, and I'd like to finish this up by Friday so I can start applying these 7 coats of wax. But still a lot of priming and block sanding left, and then I need to apply the sides because I need, about an inch or an inch and a quarter flange all the way around this to attach it to the other body panels. So a lot of work left here. I had hoped to have a roof part made by the time I posted this video, but sometimes things just don't work out like you had planned. And this has been a lot more difficult than I thought it would. I knew the body work would be difficult for me because I am horrible at body work. So I've watched a couple of videos on YouTube trying to learn better processes, and it has helped some. Still, for me, it's difficult to block sand in a concave area than it is something that's more flat or convex. But I guess that's just a learning procedure. I'll eventually get used to it and get better at it. But it's just taking some time on this. And like I said, I had hoped to have a body panel to be able to show in this video, but it just didn't happen. So hopefully in the next video, we'll have our first body panel. And I guess that's going to be about it for this week's video. The car is just sitting over here awaiting the body panels. So this whole thing has been a learning process for me, and this is a skill I'm going to have to learn and hopefully maybe not master, but at least get better at. But I guess that's it for this week's video, and I'll see you guys again in a couple of weeks.